A photograph, grainy and blurred, shows a P-61 Black Widow sitting on a moonlit runway, its twin engines silent, but its radar dome conspicuously large beneath the nose. A crackling, incomplete radio intercept trails in the background, fragments of Japanese chatter, punctuated by laughter. How could a machine designed to dominate the night skies become the subject of ridicule by those it was meant to terrorize? Why did this technological marvel, the pride of American night fighting, surrender the darkness to its enemies so easily? The paradox is clear. A plane equipped to see through night's veil was, in some inexplicable way, blind to the threat it faced. The story begins in 1942 in the bowels of a U.S. Air Force research facility, where engineers worked feverishly to counter the growing Japanese night raids. The P-61 was conceived as a response, an airborne sentinel equipped with the SCR-720 radar system, capable of detecting enemy aircraft miles away in pitch-black conditions. But across the Pacific, in the workshops of Mitsubishi and Nakajima, Japanese engineers were not merely observing, they were dissecting every intercepted transmission and radar pulse. According to a declassified report from a squadron commander in 1944, Japanese technicians mocked the chirping signals of the Black Widow's radar, dubbing it the laughable ghost. What was behind this contempt? Was it technical superiority or something more insidious, an intelligence failure within Allied command? The heart of the P-61's capability was its radar system, operating in the S-band frequency range around 3 GHz, housed in a radome beneath the fuselage. It promised detection ranges upwards of 5 miles against a bomber-sized target. Yet, the system was plagued by limitations. The radar's beam width was relatively wide, causing poor resolution. Clutter from ground returns often masked low-flying aircraft, and the electronic components were sensitive to atmospheric interference. One surviving blueprint shows the fragile vacuum tubes and the cumbersome display consoles illuminated by dim green phosphor screens. Could such a system truly dominate the chaotic nocturnal battlefield? Or was it vulnerable to simpler, low-tech countermeasures? How did these weaknesses translate into battlefield failures that the Black Widow's crews could neither ignore nor fully understand? The first combat trials of the P-61 took place in late 1943 over the Solomon Islands. A night fighter squadron was tasked with intercepting Japanese bombers returning from raids on Allied positions. Initial reports painted a promising picture. The Black Widow crews claimed multiple engagements facilitated by radar contacts. But the reality was harsher. Post-mission debriefs detailed numerous phantom contacts and missed interceptions. A transcript from a squadron radio operator reveals frustration. Radar locks on, but target vanishes, ghosts in the mist. Japanese night fighters, employing quiet approaches and low-altitude tactics, seemed to evade detection with ease. How did the headquarters fail to notice these discrepancies? Was the radar's promise a mirage, or was there a deeper flaw in the operational doctrine? Faced with these setbacks, Japanese pilots and engineers devised countermeasures rooted in simplicity and cunning. They developed radar jamming techniques using modified radio transmitters, flooding the SCR-720's frequencies with noise bursts. Night fighter tactics shifted towards silent, running, flying beneath radar coverage, and exploiting terrain. An intercepted Japanese training manual, annotated with diagrams of radar pulse patterns, gave detailed instructions on how to exploit the Black Widow's radar blind spots. Meanwhile, American pilots reported increasing frustration with the system's unreliability, leading to an over-reliance on visual spotting, aided by flares and searchlights. What was really hiding behind this illusion of technological supremacy? Could human ingenuity and adaptation outmatch advanced electronics in the dead of night? By mid-1944, the situation had reached a critical point. The Black Widow squadrons were suffering increased losses during night missions over the Philippines and Okinawa. Strategic maps from Allied command reveal a shift in air defense protocols. The night skies were increasingly ceded to Japanese night fighters, whose tactics had evolved beyond mere evasion to active disruption. Resources were stretched thin as radar. Operators struggled to maintain effectiveness amid growing electronic interference. A confidential memorandum hints at a bleak realization. The P-61's radar was insufficient against a foe that had turned its strengths into weaknesses. How did this crisis reshape the air war in the Pacific? And why did the seemingly invincible Black Widow, with all its cutting-edge technology, lose control of the night? The Japanese mockery of the P-61's radar was more than mere scorn. It was a symptom of a profound failure in Allied night fighting strategy. By exploiting design flaws, pioneering electronic countermeasures, and refining tactical discipline, Japanese forces reclaimed the night skies that the Black Widows were meant to dominate. The result was a silent, shadow war where technology alone could not guarantee victory. Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help. Connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. In the aftermath of the Black Widow's faltering night campaigns, a crucial intelligence breakthrough emerged. Not from airmen or radar technicians, but from intercepted Japanese communications. Radio intercepts captured during the summer of 1944 revealed an unsettling pattern. Conversations laced with sardonic laughter, discussing exploits of invisible hunters slipping through the radar's grasp. One decrypted message described a nocturnal raid where Japanese pilots, flying low over coral reefs, exploited radar ground clutter to vanish from screens entirely. The ambient sounds recorded during the intercept, a mix of static interference and faint voices, painted a grim picture of technological cat and mouse. How had these low-flying maneuvers become so effective against machines designed to detect the unseen? Was the P-61's radar simply outmatched by nature itself? Behind the scenes, Mitsubishi engineers had been quietly refining their own approach to electronic warfare. Drawing on captured Allied equipment and their own research, they developed rudimentary radar detectors capable of warning pilots when the SCR-720 was active nearby. A surviving sketch from an engineer's notebook shows a compact device designed to fit inside the cockpit that emitted a warning tone upon detecting radar emissions. This early form of radar warning receiver granted Japanese pilots precious seconds to alter course or dive below detection thresholds. Coupled with their low-altitude flight tactics, these devices turned the P-61's most formidable advantage into a predictable and exploitable signal. What impact did these countermeasures have on the outcome of night engagements? And why was the Allied command slow to recognize this silent evolution in enemy capabilities? Meanwhile, the P-61 crews faced mounting frustration. Pilots reported frequent false echoes on their radar scopes, flashes that resolved into nothing but waves and treetops when visually searched. Radar operators described the system as noisy and temperamental, often requiring recalibration mid-flight under stressful combat conditions. Flight logs from a night fighter squadron stationed in New Guinea reveal a disturbing trend: increasing mission aborts due to equipment failure or ambiguous radar readings. The green phosphor glow of the radar screen, once a beacon of technological hope, had become a source of confusion and mistrust. How did the psychological toll of unreliable electronics affect pilot performance? Could the human element, training, adaptability, override the hardware's deficiencies? Or was the night becoming a battleground, lost before it began? In response to these challenges, American Command initiated a series of modifications and tactical revisions. New operational protocols emphasized integrated use of radar with visual spotting, employing coordinated flare drops, and searchlight beams to compensate for radar blind spots. Engineers attempted to enhance the SCR-720's signal processing, experimenting with narrow beam antennas and improved filtering techniques to reduce ground clutter interference. However, these upgrades came late and were hampered by production bottlenecks and the escalating pace of combat. Photographs from a maintenance hangar show technicians hurriedly replacing radar components under dim lighting, a stark contrast to the sleek image of technological dominance promoted in wartime propaganda. Was this patchwork response too little? Too late? And why did the initial confidence in radar technology obscure its glaring operational vulnerabilities? The Japanese adaptation was relentless. By late 1944, night fighter units had integrated radar jamming and detection devices into their standard equipment. Pilots trained rigorously in silent approach techniques, flying along coastal contours and exploiting terrain masking to evade detection. An intercepted training film, partially restored from damaged reels, displays schematics illustrating the radar's blind zones and teaches pilots how to exploit them. This blend of technology and tactics rendered the P-61's radar increasingly ineffective. Reports from Allied intelligence noted a surge in Japanese night raids that successfully penetrated defensive airspace with minimal losses. How did this shift affect the broader strategic balance in the Pacific theater? And what lessons were overlooked by those who placed unwavering faith in radar's supremacy? As 1945 dawned, the night skies over critical battlefronts like Iwo Jima and Okinawa became arenas of contested invisibility. The P-61 squadrons, once heralded as the ultimate night hunters, found themselves outmaneuvered by a foe who had weaponized the very signals meant to betray them. A confidential protocol circulated among night fighter units underscored this grim reality. Radar contacts were to be treated with caution, and visual confirmation was paramount. Tactical maps from this period reveal shifts in patrol patterns, favoring higher altitudes and reliance on ground-based radar control. Yet, these adaptations came at a cost. Night missions became riskier and less effective, ceding the initiative to Japanese forces. How did this loss of control over the night impact the final phases of the Pacific Air War? And why did the technological edge slip away despite relentless effort and innovation? In the final months of the conflict, the P-61's diminishing role in night air superiority became starkly evident. Squadron reports from Okinawa in early 1945 describe a chilling pattern. Black Widows scrambled repeatedly to intercept radar contacts, only to find empty skies or shadows slipping past at treetop level. One pilot's log, recovered from a downed aircraft's wreckage, records a moment of despair. Radar showed a target, no visual confirmation. Enemy vanished like a ghost. Trust in this. Machine fades. The humid night air, heavy with the scent of salt and burning fuel, seemed to conspire with the enemy's tactics, eroding confidence in the radar's promise. What internal doubts haunted the crews when technology failed them? And how did these failures reverberate through the chain of command, influencing strategic decisions? Behind the scenes, efforts to overhaul the P-61's radar systems faltered under the weight of logistical constraints and shifting priorities. The war's relentless tempo demanded rapid production and deployment, leaving little room for deep technological refinement. Engineers worked feverishly to retrofit improved radar units, but field modifications were often makeshift, cobbled together with salvaged parts and jury-rigged wiring. A faded technical manual, annotated with hurried pencil notes, reveals the desperation. Increase signal-to-noise ratio, it urges. Reduce false target returns. Yet, these incremental improvements could not keep pace with the enemy's evolving countermeasures. How did the disconnect between engineering aspirations and battlefield realities shape the P-61's twilight? Why did innovation stall at the moment it was most critical? Japanese night fighter tactics, emboldened by their successes against the Black Widow, grew increasingly audacious. Pilots adopted coordinated wolf pack strategies, using electronic deception and terrain masking to overwhelm the limited detection capabilities of Allied forces. 1. Decrypted mission brief details a night raid employing synchronized jamming bursts, timed to disrupt radar sweeps just as enemy fighters approached. The eerie glow of searchlights and the distant rumble of exploding flares became the only warnings of impending attack. A damaged map recovered from a Japanese operations center marks these nocturnal routes with calculated precision. How did these aggressive tactics redefine the nature of night combat in the Pacific? And what did this mean for the men who faced invisible enemies guided by invisible signals? The psychological impact on Allied aircrews was profound. Pilots trained to rely on their instruments found themselves second-guessing every blip, every flicker on the radar screen. The cockpit's dim green glow, once a symbol of cutting-edge technology, now seemed a source of uncertainty and fear. After-action reports frequently mention radar ghosts and phantom targets, reflecting not just technical glitches, but the creeping doubt, undermining pilot confidence. The oppressive silence of the night, broken only by engine hum and distant gunfire, amplified this tension. How did this erosion of trust affect combat effectiveness? Could human resilience compensate for technological shortcomings, or was the night slipping irrevocably from Allied grasp? In the war's closing chapters, Allied command grappled with the stark reality. The P-61, despite its formidable design, had been outmaneuvered in the electronic shadows. Night, skies once thought dominated by American radar, now belonged to an enemy who turned detection into deception. Strategic documents reveal a reluctant shift toward alternative methods, ground-based radar nets, intensified searchlight coordination, and even experimental infrared detection. Photographs from a remote radar station show weary operators monitoring flickering screens, their faces etched with exhaustion. Why did these adaptations come only after the loss of night control? And what does this tell us about the complex interplay between technology, tactics, and human ingenuity in warfare's most obscure hours? In the immediate aftermath of Japan's surrender, Allied investigators sought to piece together the true story behind the P-61's faltering night dominance. Interviews with surviving Japanese engineers and pilots, combined with captured documents, painted a stark picture. The Japanese had not merely laughed at the Black Widow's radar, they had systematically dismantled its advantage through a blend of low-tech ingenuity and emerging electronic warfare. A classified memorandum from a U.S. Air Force analyst summarized the revelation bluntly. The enemy weaponized our own signals against us. A faded photograph from the interrogation archives shows a group of Mitsubishi technicians, faces solemn yet resolute, gathered around a rudimentary radar detector. What was once dismissed as mockery was, in fact, a testament to adaptive resilience. The lessons from this shadow war rippled far beyond the Pacific theater. Military strategists recognized that radar, while revolutionary, was not infallible. It could be deceived, jammed, and outmaneuvered. The P-61's legacy became a cautionary tale about the dangers of over-reliance on technology without accounting for the adversary's capacity to adapt. A final blueprint, recovered from the archives decades later, reveals late-war attempts to redesign the radar system, attempts that came too late to influence the conflict. How did this experience shape post-war air defense development? And how much did the psychological scars of those lost nights influence future generations of aviators and engineers? As the shadows of the Pacific War recede, the story of the Black Widow's night battles remains a haunting reminder. In warfare, the brightest technology can be rendered blind by the darkest cunning. The Japanese laughter echoing through broken radio waves was not mere derision, it was the sound of a night reclaimed.